NFL Network insider Ian Rapoport reporting it is a done deal. The Dallas Cowboys have released wide receiver Dez Bryant, the all-time leader in touchdown receptions for the franchise, released after his final year in Dallas, which saw the second year of declining numbers after the departure of Tony Romo and recovering from foot surgery as well. Let's bring in NFL Network insider Ian Rapoport after we get a look at Dez actually making his departure from the Cowboys facility in Frisco, Texas. This just happened moments ago. He went into the meeting with Jerry Jones and Cowboys leadership and ownership around the top of the hour, the 9 o'clock hour here Pacific time. And now we've got Ian Rapoport in to discuss what exactly transpired in this meeting. Ian, was this the plan all along?
Quick as it was, my understanding was it was owner Jerry Jones and Dez Bryant in a room, just the two of them, and seconds ago, Jerry Jones informed Dez Bryant that he was being released, a 29-year-old free agent who'd been one of the big-time faces of this franchise for several years, someone they took in the first round, someone they nurtured and helped mold into a #1 receiver in the NFL. After a down year and with a big cap hit, $16.5 million, the Cowboys decided it was not something they were going to move forward with as they continue to build this team around Dak Prescott, around Ezekiel Elliott, and what they hope is a young, up-and-coming defense. Pretty clear that Dez Bryant is not part of their plans and now officially going to be a free agent. And consider this market. It's the middle of April. Yes, most of free agency is over, but rarely do you have a situation where a 29-year-old #1 receiver is available with several teams needing players at that position.
Ian, 8 seasons all with Dallas, 73 touchdowns. The Cowboys have made a significant investment in Bryant. Was there a number that he could have come back at that they would have been comfortable with?
Well, that was the thought. When you talk to people close to Dez Bryant, what they imagined was a pay cut offer, maybe something severe, but certainly a pay cut offer. In the end, it's not clear if that came, but just judging by the length of the meeting, it doesn't sound like it really did. And look, where Jerry Jones is now, obviously informing Dez Bryant that he was being released, he really was not around the combine. Around the combine, it sounded like Jerry Jones wanted to keep him. In the end, so many people inside the building decided it was time to move on. And there was a lot of things about Dez Bryant. There was the lack of production last year. It took a lot nurturing to kind of get him to be sort of as mature as he's become from the Cowboys' perspective. A lot of off-the-field work. And you look at the makeup of this team, it was clear that the connection with Dak Prescott was just never quite there. So the Cowboys deciding clearly that there was not a number that he needed to get to. It was simply an outright release.
The timeline, Ian, puts us a couple of weeks before the NFL draft. What's the market looking like for Dez Bryant? What are his opportunities?
Well, you got to imagine he's going to have some, and I would expect this to be done before the draft. And, you know, Patrick, what teams like to do before the draft is they simply like to clear up all the holes, fill all the holes, and say, all right, we're going to take the best available player, rather than saying, all right, we need a receiver or we need someone at this position. So everyone, Dez Bryant and the team involved, whoever it is, would like to get this done before the draft so they don't have to go out and draft a receiver. So it's Friday now. I would certainly expect this to be done in the next week or so. Probably a visit would make some sense for it to happen from a comfort standpoint. But I would expect this to be done relatively quickly.
And also a guy who expects it to be done quickly, Dez Bryant, coming out of the meeting. Ian, he just tweeted, "Let's start the process. #unbothered," which is what he said yesterday in a series of tweets. And then throw up the X. He's going to keep the slogan, even though he will no longer be a Dallas Cowboy. And again, on the topic of the draft, they had some prospects coming in to visit. Do you think the Cowboys it's an obvious lean wide receiver, even more than it was earlier this week?
It's tough to know. If this was the Cowboys, say 4 or 5 years ago, where they drafted sort of the more draft for need and position specific, I would say sure. But the Cowboys have been best player available for the last couple years under Will McClay's guidance and under Stephen Jones's guidance. So I wouldn't necessarily say they'd have to go receiver first round, although they have had a lot of the top receivers in. Guys like Calvin Ridley from Alabama would be one. Christian Kirk, DJ Shark. They recently worked out. They've had a lot of the top receivers in there, so certainly a Cortland Sutton, a local kid from SMU, would make obviously a lot of sense. Big dude who proved at the combine he can really run. I would expect him to go receiver early, but maybe not necessarily first round. That's going to be just based on the value and what kind of other player they can get there.
And for those of you joining us, Ian Rapoport with the news today, the Cowboys releasing Dez Bryant moments ago following a meeting between Dez and the owner, Jerry Jones. Ian, back to the offense and the situation that they had in the past couple of years. Did they put some of the struggles on offense on Dez? Did some of the blame in terms of separation fall on Dez Bryant from the Cowboys' point of view?
Yeah, some of it did, and it's tough to know whether it was just separation, although, look, I mean, Dez Bryant can probably catch a ball in traffic as well as anyone, but yeah, I mean, it's clear he didn't separate this year as well as he did last year. Started working with a noted route guru this year to kind of help that, but obviously was not enough just from the Cowboys' perspective, but he did not get open enough last year. But it wasn't just that. I mean, I think the Cowboys offense struggled in general last year, but it wasn't just that. There was also the lack of connection with Dak Prescott, and whether it's, Dez Bryant's fault, probably not, or maybe it just didn't happen. Sometimes these things don't come together, and sometimes they do. The Cowboys offense was going in one direction, and it seemed Dez Bryant was going in another, and now he's going to really go in a different direction, a free agent, just 29 years old.
Let's go to the phones, Ian. We'll bring in one of our Hall of Famers, Deion Sanders, joining us now. Prime, your reaction to Dez Bryant no longer being a Dallas Cowboy?
Well, you got to understand, I reside in the Dallas area, so this is not shocking news. I heard this and I seen this coming. I just would like to know the particulars on what was he presented, what options was he presented with to come to this conclusion. Usually when you hear there's a meeting Friday, like the whole country heard between Dez and Jerry, that means that's a conclusion meeting, that if this isn't substantiated before then, this is the route we're going. I feel bad for Dez because oftentimes the grass is not greener on the other side. We've seen this so many times when people leave New England, when people leave major franchises like Dallas. It's hard for them to pick up where they left off, and they're never the same caliber of player. This should ignite Dez to go to the next level, and I know he has that in him. The problem is, who's out there that can even give you near worth what you were making and have the ability to win?
What do you think is left with Dez, Deion? Do you think there's still 3-4 good years of Dez left?
I feel like there's, for certain, I feel like he has to be pushed, he has to be driven, and this could catapult him to that mindset that I'm still that guy. Now people have given up on me. Now I'm going to reach down inside of me and go to the next level. First and foremost, he needs a suitable quarterback that can stand and deliver the football. He needs an offense that can move the ball up and down the field, that understands who he is as a receiver and substantially magnify his strengths instead of focus on his weaknesses. There was no number 2 in Dallas. There was no number 3 in Dallas. Zeke was out for the most part of the year. The offensive line was erratic. I mean, a young second-year quarterback, and Dez get the multitude of the blame. I understand that, and that's light. But now he has to just put all that behind him and move on.
Let's bring in another voice, Steve Smith, joining us now on the phone as well. Steve, we'll start off with your reaction to the Cowboys releasing Dez. How did you feel about the decision?
Hello, it's Steve.
Hey, Steve, can you hear me?
Oh yeah. Sorry.
How did you feel about the decision to release Dez from Dallas?
Well, I kind of heard some rumblings. It might be a possibility that was going to happen. Dez Bryant, is a phenomenal, athletic, and a go-getter, has that dog alpha male mentality. So I believe any team that picks him up, that's what they're getting. But I think as we see, as players get older, they have to adapt. They have to change their game. And even if they do, teams don't always deem them as valuable as they were prior to the release. So I just believe that he is a valuable player, but because of the Cowboys decided to move on with him, they don't value him as much as they used to. And that's unfortunate, but that is the unfortunate business of the National Football League.
That's why, you know what, guys? That's why I love NFL Network, because we have a staff of people like Steve Smith, who's going to be a future Hall of Famer, who was in the same situation. And guess what? He moved on. He was continuously the alpha male that he is, and went to another team and picked right up where he left off. So we're saying that Dez has that in him. Now, where does Dallas go? Who's going to be that guy that now they look at and say, well, shoot, we got more from Dez than we got from that. Who's going to be that guy in Dallas that's going to be that go-to guy? I don't see it on the roster.
Steve, you were able to – yeah, go ahead.
Deion is not on their roster, and I think that's what the move they're calculating right now is they're going to utilize that in a couple of weeks on the first day. Their first day guy has to be an impact player. If not, what Dallas now is going to do, what is very hard to do, is you never go to the grocery store after intense workout. You don't go grocery shopping hungry. And guess what? They starve. Right. They're going to grocery shopping now at the draft hungry, and they're going to do something that they're not supposed to do if it doesn't work out.
And I feel sorry for the receiver core that's in Dallas now, because they're going to be compared. Next, you're going to hear the rumblings about Witten. Next, you're going to hear the rumblings about Cole Beasley. Next, you're going to hear the rumblings about Zeke, because Zeke is getting ready to play a 9-man box, and everybody's going to be covered one-on-one on the outsides, because that's what it's going to look like, and it's going to be tough.
You're absolutely correct, Deion.
Steve, you were able to find a spot to continue your career and have success. Where is the spot for Dez? Who's going to, as you mentioned, see the value in him and be able to utilize it?
Well, the one unfortunate thing is they should have did it earlier, because he would have had a lot of teams now. He would have had a lot of opportunities. Now, the teams were not preparing for this. Not all 32 or 31. So now he may have where he had probably 10. He might have 2 or 3 right now. Who knows? The thing with Dez that I believe, he's a guy that he instantly makes you better if you add him to your roster. That's what he is. Yes, we all decline with age, but he hasn't declined to the point of where we're going, he can't play. He can play. He is a baller. That's what he does. But, you know, how much and how he's going to implement it, what's he going to do, you know, time will tell.
Deion, where do you think the spot?
Steve, it's tough, man, because the first connectivity that you got to have for a receiver, you got to go somewhere with a suitable quarterback. You got to go somewhere that someone could stand and deliver, or if not, you're going to get the bulk of the blame once again. The thing that I'm concerned about with Dez making this move, Jerry Jones does a wonderful job of insulating his players and giving his players all the resources that they need to be successful. Now, we all knew that Dez had a propensity at times to be tardy. We don't know if another team is going to condone that. We don't know if another team is going to put up with some of the things that the Dallas Cowboys condone. Now, Dez cleaned it up as he grew older and mature, but we don't know where it's going to matriculate to right now in this stage in his career. And that's the thing that I'm afraid of when you change addresses and location, especially if you go into a situation where you can't even see when on the schedule. That's tough.
I believe what happened in Dallas, when you get released, I think you have an opportunity to create your own narrative and a clean slate. So whatever happened in Dallas is like Vegas, stays in Dallas. And then whatever happens in a new place, you have a new rap sheet, if we want to call it that. But you have an opportunity to do things differently and create your own narrative. And I think that's the most important thing. And that's the opportunities you get when you get released.
Dez already breaking away, saying,
"Is most important money as a receiver? Is it most important for you to go somewhere with a quarterback or make some money or win at this stage in your career?"
For me, my money was good and it's still good. So I invested well and paid attention to it. And then quarterback, if you have a good quarterback, the wins are going to come. If you have a bad quarterback, or you're going for a place just over money, and then the geographical location and the foundation of that organization has the propensity of not winning, then now you're going to fall into that. But great quarterback equals great wins, and then everything else falls into place.
Dez letting the people of Dallas know how he feels. He just said this, Cowboy Nation, I need you to know this wasn't my decision. I will always love y'all. Forever Dallas in my heart. Thanks to Deion Sanders and Steve Smith joining us there. There's the tweet just from a couple of minutes ago from Dez Bryant, letting the people in Texas know how he feels about them and the opportunity. As for other reaction around the league, this one coming from a guy who just made his way to Houston by way of Arizona. Tyrann Mathieu, the Honey Badger, says, come to Houston, bro. Just straight up at Dez Bryant. The recruiting has already begun. Let's recruit some more voices to talk about Dez Bryant's release from the Dallas Cowboys. We'll go now to here in Los Angeles, our Greg Rosenthal joining us. Greg, let's start with your reaction. How do you feel about the decision to let Dez go?
I'm a little surprised, and I think it was the right move, but it's the move that the Cowboys historically have not made. This is a franchise that has been sentimental over the years, that has kept their really great players, and Dez Bryant has been a great player for them, all-time leader in touchdown catches. They usually keep those players too long. If the Cowboys have made any mistakes in the front office under Jerry Jones, it's usually self-scouting. They have given a lot of big-time contracts to players that they already had, that they fall in love with, too much money, and then they often keep them too long. I think this is a move that makes a lot of sense to me, and it's a move, if we saw it on any other franchise, I don't know if we're breaking into coverage, and I think it wouldn't be controversial. It would be an important move because of the place he has in the franchise, but it was clear to me, and I think it was clear to the Cowboys, that he was no longer worth that sort of money. He was getting one-on-one matchups repeatedly throughout last year. He was not getting double teams, and he was not winning those battles. And I think the Cowboys rightly put it more on Dez Bryant than they did their quarterback, Dak Prescott.
Greg, the number $12.5 million in salary this year, 16 against the cap. What would that number have been? Where do you think that they would have found a middle point in value to keep Dez around if that's something that they wanted to do?
I wonder if they even went to him for a pay cut based on what Dez Bryant just tweeted out, that it was not his decision. If he was willing to go down to $7-8 million and possibly make some more back in incentives, that could have made sense. He can still play in the NFL. He'll get signed elsewhere. But I do think you get into trouble long-term as a franchise when you are paying guys superstar money that just aren't superstars. And Dez Bryant has the competitiveness of a superstar, but he no longer has the production of a superstar.
Greg Rosenthal, stick around. We're going to go back to Ian Rapoport with more news on this. Ian, what do you have for us?
Yeah, just to answer some questions and specifics on this, the Cowboys, I'm told, did not offer Dez Bryant a pay cut, and he also will not be a post-June 1 designation. In other words, they're not going to carry any money from him into the 2018 season. It is simply a clean start. They're going to take whatever hit it is now, and they're going to move on. And this signals a couple things. First of all, this really was not about money. Also, the Cowboys could have believed that Bryant would not have accepted a pay cut. Bryant has kind of gone back and forth publicly about what he would or would not accept depending on how the Cowboys came to him. But Jerry Jones did not do that. He simply released him. And there were several people, many people, inside the organization who believed it was time for a clean start, a clean slate for Dez Bryant and for the Cowboys. My understanding is Jerry Jones was sort of the last person to come to this, but that is where it is right now, and the Cowboys moving forward with Dak, with Zeke, and with whoever they draft a receiver, while Dez Bryant now becomes a pretty coveted free agent. And I want to bring up one more thing. Mickey Spagnuolo, who's a Cowboys.com columnist, also does radio for them, just tweeted that he heard, I would imagine the sources are pretty good, Bryant told the Cowboys, I'll see you twice next year, which would seem to indicate someone in the NFC East. Giants could use a receiver. Redskins could use a receiver. Would make it interesting.
Yeah, a couple of revenge game opportunities there. Ian Rapoport with the latest on Dez. No offer of a pay cut from Jerry Jones. Let's go to Steve Wyche now. Steve, you just heard the claim there that Dez wants to go up against this team, have an opportunity for revenge games. What are you hearing in terms of interest for Dez Bryant?
Well, first off, Patrick, within minutes, and I mean probably less than 2 minutes, I
I heard back from 3 NFL personnel guys who said the free agent market is going to be incredibly aggressive for Dez Bryant. The Cowboys may not think he fits what they want to do, but there are an abundance of NFL teams who would love to get Dez Bryant on their team at the right price. Money could be the deal breaker. If Dez is trying to make the type of money he was scheduled to make in Dallas, that could be a roadblock. But again, I mean, it was so fast, and these are people, one within the division, who made it sound like there's going to be a very aggressive market for Dez Bryant. Now, you look at the history of a team like Washington. This seems like a move that they would probably love to make. They've just got Alex Smith there to get him a big type of red zone receiver. We know Alex Smith is very good in the red zone. This is going to be a team, I think, that's going to be immediately connected to the situation. I have not heard specifics that Washington is a team that's going to go after him. However, this seems like something, a Daniel Snyder type move if they do pursue Dez Bryant. Again, I'm with Ian just reported. I have heard that this was not necessarily a financial thing. This is something where they just felt it was time to move on from Dez on the field, off the field, clear the deck. Huge void now for Dallas. We can sit here and say all we want about him not being able to win one-on-one matchups X, Y, and Z. They now have to fill their top wide receiver spot. There are not a ton of number one free agent wide receivers available, and this is not necessarily a strong draft for a number one wide receiver. So this is something Dallas has to look at and to figure out who's going to be, its main target for Dak Prescott. But again, to get back to Dez Bryant, he may not be unemployed by the time the draft gets here. It sounds like there's going to be a bidding war, not necessarily for money, but for the services of Dez Bryant.
And, Steve, you mentioned his production, 11 touchdowns per season from 2012, 2015. And then we talk about the dip in production. It still was 7 touchdowns every year between 2016 and 2017. So what do you think that final number is? The Cowboys electing not to pay him that $12.5 million. Do you think he could get back in that range with a potential bidding war?
I think he could in terms of structure, maybe not necessarily an annual average, but in terms of structure, in terms of need. I know Dez supposedly, or the report that was it Mickey Spagnola, I guess, that Ian just said, that Dez said he'll see you twice a season. But if you're a team like the Green Bay Packers, you just lose Jordy Nelson. You've got a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers. You put Dez with the right quarterback in the right system, that type of West Coast system up there, he could be highly productive. They can incentivize him to make that money back, and that's another way. I don't think teams necessarily are going to get crazy because we see the wide receiver market financially has just gone through the roof. Looking at the contract with Jarvis Landry, just got things like that. I don't think Dez is going to get paid as a young wide receiver necessarily entering a second type of contract. But the numbers with incentives and things like that could absolutely, get Dez up there necessarily what he was scheduled to earn the season in Dallas.
Steve, before we go, you said before the draft, do you think this could happen at some point next week?
Based on the calls I got, immediately after the news came out, it sounds like this could happen pretty quickly unless Dez is holding out for significant